Present Callie.
All right. Well, hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to tell you guys a little bit about our zoo. Okay, so first I'll just introduce myself. My name is Callie Carpenter. I've been working at the Palm Beach Zoo for almost 9 years now. It's been a very long time. Um, my career started at the Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo in Gainesville. That's where I met Carolina for the first time. So that's where my career started, got a degree in zoo animal science. After that, I moved back home to West Palm Beach. I'm born and raised in this area. And then I started an internship at the Palm Beach Zoo. And after that, I joined the team as one of the zookeepers, and I have been there ever since. So I wanted to include a couple of pictures of some of the coworkers I get to work with every day. So the bird that's in the picture, that is Serena. She is a green-winged macaw. In the top left corner, we've got a couple of our African crested porcupines. Their names are Priscilla and Cleo. And then in the bottom corner, that is Miss Wilbur. Wilbur is a Hoffman's two-toed sloth. So I get to work with a variety of different animals, birds, reptiles, and mammals, all sorts of really amazing critters. So the Palm Beach Zoo is located in West Palm Beach, Florida. We are in Dreher Park, which is right off of Summit Boulevard. If you're driving north on 95 and you see a little sign peeking over the wall that says zoo, that is us right before you get off on Southern. We're about 23 acres, and it's a very lush tropical environment. So the zoo was founded in 1969. So we've been around for about 52 years.
Like us, we were founded in 1969.
Wow, all right, that's what a coincidence. All right, so when we're talking about conservation, we are talking about a very complex issue. I mean, we're really talking about trying to save the planet. We're trying to protect our wildlife, we're trying to protect our wild places, and that's not something that you can just hit from one angle. You have to use a lot of different strategies because we're talking about such a major, global issue. And so that's why Conservation Society is a part of our name, because we take that very seriously and we work very hard to keep it a core part of our mission to protect wildlife and wild places. So today I'm going to talk about a few different ways that we do that. One of those ways is by connecting people to wildlife, connecting the people that walk through our doors every day, and connecting them to the animals that they see. We also have breeding programs for endangered species as well to help to prevent some of those species from going extinct. And we also participate in some field conservation programs as well. So connecting people to wildlife is probably the biggest impact that we have. And I say that because we see at least 300,000 people that come through our gate every single year. So that is a major opportunity to outreach to the community and make a positive impact on people that may or may not have the opportunity to spend a lot of time in natural places or have exposure to wildlife in their backyards or in their areas. So we try really hard to make sure that the people that come through the gates see our animals and feel happy and excited about them. They feel inspired by them and walk away feeling good and wanting to make it a part of their life and their experience to want to protect and have a new respect for the animals that they meet while they're here. So there's a few different ways that we do that. So we have some animals that we are able to bring out onto the guest pathway. So trying to give people the opportunity for up close encounters is one way that we're able to do that. If we can connect people to these animals on a very personal level, then that's one way that we can inspire them to want to go off and be able to save these animals in these wild places. So you can see that we're taking Priscilla for a walk in this picture. So Priscilla loves to go on walks around the zoo, and it's a fun way that people get to see an animal that you definitely don't see every day up close and personal, and see him walking around the zoo. He loves going for his walks. We also have other animal experiences that people can do to get an even more intimate experience with our animals. So you can see that Wilbur in the top right corner is doing our sloth encounter. She gets hand-fed grapes. She likes grapes and blueberries and apples, and people get to see her very closely and kind of create that experience with her. There's also our Aldabra encounters. You can see as well. And that's one of our smaller Aldabra tortoises. These tortoises get to be massive. And so, these animal experiences help give people a really unique opportunity to make connections with these animals. So in addition to connecting people to these animals, we also want to make sure that we're doing our part where we can in being able to protect endangered species from going extinct. So the one that I want to focus on telling you about today is our tigers. So we have Malayan tigers at the Palm Beach Zoo. And Malayan tigers are a critically endangered species of tiger. There's only estimated to be about 250 individuals left in the wild. So the likelihood of this species going extinct is really high. It's too high for comfort. So there is a lot of issues that around the area that they live. Habitat loss is a major issue for them. The wildlife trade, there's, these guys are hunted oftentimes for, claws and whiskers and, things like that for medicinal use and just souvenirs and things like that. So that's one reason why their populations aren't doing awesome. And then also the palm oil is another big issue for these guys. Palm oil can be farmed sustainably, but oftentimes is not. And so it takes up a lot of land that tigers and many other species in this area need to be able to survive. So that's why we have our two tigers that we have pictured here. Their names are Api and Kadar. So these tigers are very important, and they are a key for the survival of this species. Because if the species goes extinct in the wild, we want to be able to preserve these genetics so that we can, maybe one day be able to step in and help if that is needed and if the habitat can sustain a tiger population. So Api is the one that has her paw raised right there. She's playing with Kadar. Kadar is the one that's underneath. So Api is our female. So Api is very important because she is one of only 3 breeding females in human care. So her genetics are extremely important because there's not very many Malayan tigers in human care and not very many that have the ability to breed. So this is very important. And for Kadar, this is his first litter here at the zoo. So we wanted to breed them so that we can make sure that we're able to pass on these genetics and help to preserve the species. So breeding tigers is not as easy as just putting 2 tigers in the same area and hoping that everything goes well. Tigers are extremely solitary animals. So, most of the time they don't want to be together, and it can be a very dangerous situation if 2 tigers do end up in the same space and they don't want to be. So our zoologists have to work really hard to watch Api's behavior and Kadar's behavior very closely because they have a less than 1 week window where she is cycling and could possibly get pregnant and where it would be safe to be able to put them together. So our zoologists have to be very well trained, very well educated, and be able to know what they're looking for so that way we can safely do this. So they were successful. We were able to, Api got pregnant and she produced 3 cubs. They were born May 12th of 2020. Some more cute cub pictures. So these cubs are extremely important, and one day they're going to hopefully go off and be able to help to push this mission forward and be able to help to preserve this species so that the species doesn't go extinct. So the names of these tigers are Triton is our male, and then we have 2 girls. Their names are Melody and Kahaya. So these are our little tiger cubs. They're about 1.5 years now. So even though they're still pretty young, they're about the size of their parents. And yeah, so they've grown up quite a bit. Now, another breeding program that we have. This one is a breeding and release program that we're a part of. It is called the Perdido Key Beach Mice program. And these little mice are very tiny. They're only about 5 inches, but they have a really important role to play in their environments. And these mice almost went extinct in the 1990s. And that was largely due to habitat loss and just destruction of the sand dunes that they live in due to hurricanes and human encroachment and development on these keys. So the reason why these animals are so important is because they live in these sand dunes, and their role in these dunes is to help to preserve them and help to maintain them. And these dunes are important for making sure that erosion doesn't happen, and it's really important for the health of that entire key. So these mice are, little but mighty, and they're very important. So we are a part of a breeding program for them, as well as partnering with the Santa Fe College Teaching Zoo and Central Florida Zoo and Brevard Zoo to be able to have a breeding and release program for these mice. And it has been pretty successful. We have raised their population to at least close to 500 individuals. Because of the state of their habitat, they may not come off of the endangered list because their habitats, the issues that surround their habitat, haven't quite been resolved yet. And so that's why we are continuing this breeding and release program to help maintain these mice and help to be able to preserve the species. So that's a little bit of what we do in the zoo. We also work really hard with some really interesting field conservation programs as well. So one of them is that we have a small dive team that actually goes out to do some coral reef monitoring. So this team works with the Florida Reef Resilience Program. And so what they're doing is they're going out to our reefs alongside of Florida's coast, and they're monitoring our coral for its health to try to see, is our coral healthy, or are there any diseases that are happening off of our coast? So one issue that they're looking for is the stony coral tissue loss disease, which looks a little bit like this. So this is the kind of thing that they are looking for when they are looking off of our reefs, is looking for any signs of disease. Our oceans and our corals are the coral reefs are very important for biodiversity. They house at least 25% of the biodiversity in our oceans, so they are essential. And these corals, even though they look like they're just rocks, are actually live animals. And so what you see happening with the discoloration here is called bleaching. And so that's actually the coral dying. So if our coral dies, then we are losing a lot of animals and biodiversity and the homes that these animals need that the corals provide. So our survey team goes out to try to monitor so we can make sure that we are keeping track of what's happening with our reefs and see if we're having any of that off of our coast. Now, another project that we're a part of is called the Path of the Panther. So this is a photography project. Carlton Ward Jr. is a National Geographic photographer, and this is his project to raise awareness for the necessity of wildlife corridors in Florida. So if you look at this map, you can see a lot of different green patches on there. So those are really important wildlife spaces, and the goal is to be able to connect all of these spaces so that there is a way that wildlife can get to these different spaces without having to cross roads or cross other communities and areas where they're going to get hurt or encroach on where people are. So you can see how fragmented that a lot of these spaces are. And so that affects an animal's ability to go to another area if they are in need of resources or if they need to breed. So the goal for the Wildlife Corridor Project is to be able to connect these areas to give animals a safe passageway. So what Carlton Ward has done is set up camera traps in some of these wildlife corridor areas. So places like underpasses of roads or even pathways through, large preserves and ranches to show that these animals are using these corridors, and that investing in wildlife corridors is going to be useful and going to make a really big difference for our wildlife. So the girl that's pictured here, this is Kelly McCory. She's one of our panther keepers at the zoo. And she also is one of the zoologists that gets to go out and help Carlton Ward with maintaining the camera equipment. So he sets up the cameras to be able to take these amazing photos of these panthers and other animals that are using the corridors. And then this team goes out to help to keep track of these cameras, make sure that the equipment is still looking good, make sure that everything is set up to be able to capture some really amazing photos like this one. So this photo is a really important photo because it is evidence of a mother panther with cubs. And this is really significant because panthers in the 70s were almost extinct. There was thought to be only about 20 individual panthers left out in the wild. And today their numbers have gone up to closer to 200, which is significant, but the only breeding population that we know of, thanks to this photo, is in South Florida. So, that is dramatically different than what Florida used to look like and what Florida needs to be able to maintain a healthy ecosystem. So that's why this project is so important, to be able to help to continue to monitor what's going on with our panther populations and be able to raise awareness for the needs for Florida corridors. And we have seen some success with it. Florida recently passed the Florida Wildlife Corridor Act, which puts a lot of money toward being able to create these preserves and create the wildlife corridor in many areas. So we're already making seeing some results from this project, which is pretty incredible. Now, this project is near and dear to my heart. This is the Swallowtail Kite project. So these birds are really amazing. They're a really unique bird of prey species. They migrate all the way down from South America, all the way up into the southeastern United States. And they spend a lot of time in South Florida, and there's a lot of roosts throughout Florida. So this is a big area where you'll see them spending a lot of time breeding and mating, and it's a really important environment for them. So these kites, their migratory range has changed dramatically over the years, because they used to migrate all the way up into the Midwest, all the way up into Minnesota. And we've seen over the years that their range has reduced dramatically to where now you don't really see them much further north in South Carolina. And that is largely due to habitat loss. These guys love to roost in really high trees, like pine trees, as well as cypress trees are some of their favorites. So we have a lot more of that in Florida than we do in the Midwest right now. So that's why we don't see them traveling up that way. So where we come in to help with this is by being one thing that will help us to be able to monitor how they're doing is to be able to put telemetry on them, which are little backpacks that these birds can wear to be able to track where they go, and we can then look and see how far they are traveling. So we work very closely with the Avian Conservation and Research Institute. So that is Ken and Gina, who are pictured in the top left or top right corner. So they are our main researchers. They have a lot of what we know about swallowtail kites comes from these two individuals right here. So thanks to them, we're able to get a lot of data of what's happening with our kites. And so they are the ones that put the telemetry on them and monitor and track them. The other people pictured, we also work very closely with the Environmental Resources Management Department of the Palm Beach County. And so they help us to be able to monitor where the kites are and be able to help bring us out onto the land to look for the kites. And then we get to put backpacks on these kites. So what that looks like when you're trying to put a backpack on a kite is that you need to be able to temporarily get hands on them to put the backpack on them and then release them back out into their environment. And so what we do for that to be able to bring them close enough that we can do that is it involves this bird that you see right here. This is Hino. Hino is a great horned owl, and this is the main predator of the swallowtail kites. So swallowtail kites are not a big fan of Hino. Now, Hino is a rehab bird. So he was imprinted when he was a fledgling. Someone took him in, tried to raise him, and then he was not able to be released because he didn't know that he was an owl. He didn't have the skills that he needed to be able to go back out into the wild. So he joined our zoo as an education animal. And so he also doesn't know that he's not supposed to like swallowtail kites. He has no idea that they're supposed to be scary. So when we bring him out into the field, and what we do is we bring him out there, and then when the kites see him, they immediately think that they want to try to get the owl to leave the area. So they start to fly a lot lower in order to try to intimidate the owl and try to get the owl to leave. So in the bottom picture, you can see there's a little tent that's there. So that's where we sit and wait while Hino sits and does his thing, because we don't want the kites to be suspicious of us. We want them to focus on Hino. So while we're hiding in there, Hino is, kind of sitting there and looking. He seems to love it. He looks around. He's really calm. He likes to kind of look at the birds and other animals that are around. And so he's just living his best life. And then the kites start to fly. And what might be a little bit difficult to see because of the lighting is that there is a really fine net that is on the right-hand side of that photo. So that is called a mist net. And so that net is very gentle, and it's designed to be able to help researchers catch wild birds in a way that is safe and not going to harm the birds. And so as soon as a kite flies low enough that it goes into the net, we jump out of the hunting blind, we can pull it down, and then get the kite in hand, put the backpack on, get some important data and measurements, and then the kite gets released back out into the wild. So Hino has successfully put telemetry on 3 kites so far. So we're very proud of him. And that is then able to give us a lot of information about where these kites are. Do they return to the same area every year? Just a lot more information about these birds and how they're using the environment. So another way that we contribute to swallowtail kite conservation is by helping to count how many kites are in the area. So when kites roost together, they roost in the hundreds. And you can see in this picture how closely together they all hang out. So there's hundreds and hundreds of birds that hang out in this group. And so one way to be able to tell how many birds are in our area is by counting them. So in the morning, they wake up and they start to fly away from the roost to go, and they start hunting and kind of start their day. And so what we do is we stand by where the roost is and we count them as they leave. And I think the highest number that I know of that we counted was about 615 birds from a single roost. So there's a lot of them. So we have our little clicker and we have our binoculars and we watch, and every time a bird flies away from the roost and soars off into the distance, we count them until they all decide that they're ready to start their day and leave the roost. And then we're able to give that information to Gina and Ken so that they can add that to their data as well. So between putting telemetry on the kites and then being able to count them, we're able to get a lot of information about these birds and what they're doing. And the reason that it's so important that we're watching the species and being able to protect them is not only because their range has changed, and so that decrease in population we don't want that to continue. So we want to monitor that and see what's going on with that, but also protecting this species is essential for being able to protect a lot of other animals that use that same environment. So these birds are considered a keystone species in that protecting them protects a lot of the animals that they eat, which includes frogs, it includes insects, small lizards, and the habitats that these birds need are very specific. It's cypress trees, it's pine trees. And so being able to protect that habitat is also home for a lot of different animals as well. So this is a very important species for us to focus on and make sure that this population is protected and make sure that this population continues to stay nice and healthy. So here is a map just to give you a little bit of a visual of what these birds do. So these birds come up into the Southeast United States between February and all the way through to all through to August. By late August, they've all started making their way back down to South America. So these guys go all the way down into Argentina and Peru. So they have quite a big trip. And so this map is a map of that ARCI produced of the some of the birds that we've put telemetry on, so we can. So 3 of those birds are 3 of them that Hino has tagged, and so that we're able to see what these birds are doing. Yeah, and you can see kind of where they stop too. You can see the 2 yellow ones at the top are just kind of down into the Southeast United States, but they used to go a lot further north. All right, so that kind of is that's a big overall view of some of the different ways that we hit our conservation efforts here at the zoo. This picture is Darla. She's a southern ground hornbill that is near and dear to my heart, and she likes to present rocks to people. So she's presenting a rock to us. Yeah, so those are our main conservation programs that I wanted to share with you. So thank you very much for coming to our presentation, and I'm really happy to answer any questions that you guys might have about any of the animals or any of the topics that I talked about today.
That was awesome. So cool. I'm hoping that at some point we can grow to be able to be a part of stuff like that too. But we have a lot to do first. So super exciting that, you know, you guys aren't that far away and you're doing all that cool stuff. I don't know if you can read the chat or not, but Shannon loved the tigers, and she's one of our volunteers. And she just said thank you.
Oh, I have the chat open now. Yeah, the tigers are amazing. And they're so big now. I can't believe how big these tigers are now.
Is Api the original Barapi?
So Api, so there's Api, and then her mother is Barapi.
Okay, because I worked there when Barapi was there. And
yes.
Had her. Okay.
So Api has had one other litter prior to coming here. I believe it was at the Virginia Zoo is where she had her first litter. So this coming down here, this was her first litter here with us. But it's still very exciting. And she's about 10 years old. So she's, you know, hopefully she'll want to produce maybe one more litter, you know, because that's starting to get up there in age for tigers. Not quite old. Tigers in human care can live to be close to 20. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, you guys don't have any other questions, I'm going to stop the recording.